All right. I'd like to start out by saying Barakateh Hawa, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rachakodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is just basically various topics dated June 16th, 2020, year of prophecy. And pretty much just a couple of points, you know, just want to talk about a couple of things, bring out a few precepts, and Lord's will close the lesson, and Lord's will it'll be edifying. First thing I want to talk about, something I've been kind of meditating on for a couple of weeks now, probably about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, and it's dealing with the destruction of all these racist statues that you see around the world, and how they're cutting off the heads of Christopher Columbus and taking down certain racist statues of Edomites that have had slaves or were pro-slavery, wherever the case may be. Now, on the one hand, that's a good thing because it shows that Esau is losing his power. But on the other hand, what I was meditating on was that this is Esau's way, or the elite's way, of erasing slavery, physical remnants of slavery, from history, because it's very easy for them to take the books and get rid of the stuff out of the books or burn the books or whatever the case is, like in the movie Equilibrium, where all they were doing was going around finding different art and books and different things of that nature and burning them up. So that'd be easy for them to get rid of, or they could just take it out of the books when they reprint, and eventually, as they keep so-called teaching the youth, it'll be pretty much gone. So that's what I was, meditating on, that these statues being taken down and thrown in the sea, and getting Confederate flags being removed and all that stuff, is Esau physically removing slavery, from where people could actually see and know, well, what's this guy all about? What's that guy all about? What happened with this individual? Why is there a statue to this guy? What's the significance between this flag? And people could always go back and say, well, that happened during slavery, back in such and such and this and that and the other. The so-called white man went over to the interiors of Africa and took certain individuals that were over there, people of color, which they're going to call Africans, but they're not Africans. They're going to call black. They're not black. They're Hebrew Israelites, and enslaved them against their will, kidnapped them and enslaved them and brought them over here to the Americas and sold them as slaves, and they work for free labor, So now if those physical things ain't there, nobody can speak on it, and it'll be, like they say, out of sight, out of mind. So that was, one thing I was thinking about, when it came to those statues being removed, that they're trying to physically remove the stain of slavery, the stain of how they got the lands of the so-called Americas, in the Western Hemisphere, how they raped, robbed, murdered the indigenous people in this land, from Canada all the way down to South America and everything in between. And any physical statues of that they remove, there will be no more shame, because they're trying to cover all that up. But that's just my personal feeling on it. Like I said, on the other hand, them being taken down, is a sign of Esau going down, their power being taken away from them, but I'm leaning towards also that they're trying to remove the shameful history that they have. So what I want to do is I want to go through a couple of precepts just to deal with that point, and then we'll move on to point number 2. And the first point is in the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 41st chapter, and we're going to start at the 5th verse. It says, the children of sinners are abominable children. So Esau's children and Esau himself, they're abominable. No matter of fact, let's look up this word abominable, and let's build off of that, because there's a whole lot that can be said off of that alone. So let's go to the Common Dictionary. This one's offline. Like I said, it's not gonna be concise and everything, or should I say, it's not gonna be extensive. But at least we'll get some kind of something. Damn it, man. Okay, abominable. Oops. Just bear with me. Okay. So, okay, all right, can't find abominable. Let's see if we can find abomination. Oh, that's why. Spelt it wrong. Salakia. Abominable. Abominable. Okay. It says unequivocally detestable, exceptionally bad or displeasing. And this one name comes to mind, Esau or Edom, and that describes them to a T. And that's why they're known as the abomination that maketh desolate. That's why they're also known as Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth, because everything that they do and touch becomes abominable, because there's nothing sacred in their sight, and that's just the way it is. That's what they were created for. They were created to be the wicked, and this is why we read in Genesis the 25th chapter on the two boys that were born. One was righteous and the other one was wicked, and that's why I said that the two manner of people shall be separated. And that's why the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians will never get along with the so-called white man, the Edomites. The Israelites will never get along with the Edomites. That is something that was etched in stone from the womb. All right? So it says, the children of sinners are abominable children, and they that are conversant in the dwelling of the ungodly. And that's what they do. They're conversing in the dwelling of the ungodly. Why? Because the ungodly are the ones that are in power, and they're pushing the agenda of the ungodly. So whenever you're down for whatever this government or this empire or this world stands for, your conversation is going to be an abomination, because you're not going to stand up for righteousness, because you're not going to want to be displeasing to people. You're going to want to be PC, because that's what they teach you in this society. They speak of the world, therefore the world heareth them. Because if you spoke against the world would not accept ones that speak against the world. They only accept the ones that speak of the world, because they are a part of the world. So it says, the inheritance of sinners' children shall perish. And that's the truth, because you see how they're in wealth and how they transfer their wealth to their sons and their daughters, so on and so forth. And they're constantly, ahead of the 8 ball. They're constantly on top. That's all going to change, because those inheritances that they keep passing down from generation to generation are going to be transferred over to the Israelites once the kingdom of heaven is established on the earth. And when you read Isaiah the 60th chapter, it tells you how the gates of Jerusalem are going to be open day and night, so that the nations can bring in their riches, which is really our riches. It says, the inheritance of sinners' children shall perish, and their posterity, which means their descendants, shall have a perpetual reproach. And this perpetual reproach comes by way of the way in which Esau has come into power, the way that they have set themselves up into power. It wasn't a thing where they went somewhere and built that place up and worked very hard, and now we're seeing the fruits of their labors. No, what they did was they stole everything. They raped, robbed, and murdered the whole planet. So what they have now is something that they've cultivated after they conquered it. So it's a reproach. So that's why I believe, you want to know what I believe? An inside joke. That's why I believe that a lot of these statues that are being taken down is orders coming from the top to do that, so that they can erase this shameful history that Esau has. It says the children will complain of an ungodly father, and that's what's happening. That wasn't us. That was our forefathers. I never had any slaves. You never went into slavery. Yeah, but it's a vicious cycle. And the people that were back then are here now, and they're doing the same exact things that they were doing back then. You know, and they have to pay for the things that were done in the past. Matter of fact, let's go real quick to Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 21, because you Edomites are not going to escape. You're trying to weasel out of it. You're trying to come up with excuses. You're trying to plead your cause. But just like our pleas went unheard, you know, they fell on deaf ears, so will yours fall on deaf ears, because you put your hands on the people of the Most High, you know. And even if you say that you didn't do it personally, you really did, not in this lifetime, but in another lifetime, because there is a such thing as reincarnation in the Bible. So this is Isaiah 14 and 21. It says, prepare slaughter for his children, which are you people today, you Edomites, you descendants, the posterity of you are being prepared for slaughter. And right now, the preparation is coming by way of what? A verbal thing. It's a verbal warning now. The Most High is telling you verbally what's going to happen to you. It says, prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of their fathers. So for the things that your forefathers did, you're going to be prepared. Now, what does this mean? That means that you are your forefathers coming back, because we know when we read the scriptures with understanding that a father will not pay for the sins of the son, neither will the son pay for the sins of the father. So how can someone's children be prepared for slaughter if they hadn't done anything? Well, the thing is that as their fathers, the sin of their youth, they came back in this lifetime to what? To receive the punishment for something they did in the past. And this is what these plantation Christians are trying to get away from, because they don't want to pay for what their forefathers did, because that is a huge tab. That is a huge shameful tab that has not been paid for, but it will be paid for by you, his children. So let's read that again. Prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities, because that's what you've done. You went around the world, you conquered the world, you took the people out of it, you stole their culture, you stole their identity, you stole their land, you stole their riches, you know, and then you went up in there and planted your face as the face of those people. That's why nowadays, when you go back into the Greek Empire, you have a dynasty, which is a Ptolemaic dynasty, which you had so-called white-looking pharaohs in Egypt. Why? Because you conquered that land through Alexander the Great, and then the Ptolemies that were set up into power took over the culture and the customs and the dress of those ancient Egyptians and put themselves in their stead. That's why today you have pictures and busts and different relics of Edomite-looking pharaohs, because there was a period of time for about roughly 300 years, a little less than 300 years, where you have a list, for lack of better words, of pharaohs that were Edomites, because you conquered Egypt. And that's the same thing you've done around the world. So your children today have to pay for all of that. Whatever they didn't pay for in the past, they have to pay for now. That's why they're being prepared for slaughter, for the iniquity of their fathers, because you have to pay for what your fathers did, because you are your forefathers coming back in the reincarnation. So going back to Ecclesiasticus 41 and 7, the children will complain of an ungodly father, because they shall be reproached for his sake. That's why you have Edomites screaming out, that wasn't me, that was my forefathers. I didn't do that. I didn't have no physical slaves. You didn't have any, you never went into slavery. Yeah, but not in this lifetime, even though we're still slaves in this lifetime. But this time is contractual, you know. But you, as in the past, as your forefathers, you had our forefathers in slavery. So guess what? Now you have to pay for it. That's why you're being prepared. And it comes by the way of a verbal thing first, and then eventually the Lord is going to bring the real judgment, which is going to be physical. But you Edomites that are here on the soils of America, you're not going to make it. You're going to die here. You're going to be burnt up in a nuclear holocaust here in America. But then when your rest of your kind is rounded up and brought into slavery, guess what? Then you will be brought back through them as their children. And that's when you're going to suffer your fate. So now it says, going back, it says, verse 8, woe be unto you, ungodly men, which have forsaken the law of the Most High power. For if you increase, it shall be to your destruction. And if you be born, you shall be born to a curse. And if you die, a curse shall be your portion, because the curses are going to be lifted off of us and put upon you, you Edomites and you other nations. All that are of the earth shall turn to the earth again. So the ungodly shall go from a curse to destruction. And you were created to be destroyed. That's the only reason why you were created, to show how what it is, or what a world looks like that is run by the wicked, and what the penalty is for being wicked. When we see America going up in smoke, inside joke. All right, so now let's go from there. Let's get a couple more precepts on that, and then we can move on to the next point. This is Job chapter 27 and verse 13. This is the portion of a wicked man with the Most High, and the heritage of oppressors, which they shall receive of the Almighty. If his children be multiplied, it is for the sword, and his offspring shall not be satisfied with bread. And that's the key. Because in the kingdom, you're gonna be doing very bad. In this society, we're doing bad because of the curses of the Lord, and you had manipulated and set up certain situations to where we as a nation would never be able to prosper in this society, unless some of our the people of our nation sold out to you, which they have. But for the most part, Jake is not going to prosper in this society. And Jake is always looking to advance. They're always looking to get out of that slump. And they always find themselves right back to square one. And there's a reason for that. It's called the curses. Read the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy. All right. It says, those that remain of him shall be buried in death, and his widow shall not weep. And not even your Edomite women are going to be lamenting you when you die. Because it's going to be a new day. It says, though he heap up silver as the dust and prepare raiment as the clay, he may prepare it, but the just shall put it on, and the innocent shall divide the silver. That's right, because the innocent, which are the Israelites, will put on and receive all of those riches that you stole. You're going to have to replace that. He buildeth his house as a moth, and as a booth that the keeper maketh. The rich man shall lie down, but he shall not be gathered. He openeth his eyes, and he is not. Terrors take hold on him as waters. A tempest stealeth him away in the night, because you're going to be done away with eventually. It says, the east wind carrieth him away, and he departeth, and as a storm hurleth him out of his place. For the Most High shall cast upon him and not spare. He would fain flee out of his hand. Men clap their hands at him and shall hiss him out of his place, because it's time for you devils to go down. It's time for you devils to disappear. And I had a couple more precepts on that, but you know what? I'm gonna leave it there just to move on to the next topic, which kind of ties in to this. So that topic was, I believe that they're taking these slavery figure statues down because they're trying to physically erase slavery, because it's a very reproachful or shameful history that these Edomites have. Which leads me into the next topic, which is called Juneteenth, which we're coming up in a couple of days. June 19th will be Juneteenth. Now, what is Juneteenth? Juneteenth goes back to 1865 during the signing of the so-called Emancipation Proclamation, when when the residents of Galveston, Texas, were told that they were freed on June 19th. So that's what it goes back to. So they're about to celebrate that coming up in a couple of days. I'm not sure. I believe they said it was 150th year anniversary or something like that. If I'm not mistaken, I would have to do the math myself. But nevertheless, they're pushing that as if something like Juneteenth is really a good thing, because they're actually believing that the slaves were so-called freed, from captivity, from slavery. But this is why these devils are very clever, because Jake doesn't understand the meaning of words, because, and that's why Esau uses those big words like Emancipation Proclamation. They know Jake wasn't allowed to read, so they Emancipation Proclamation, man, we free? Okay, cool. But really they didn't understand the concept of emancipation. So now the word emancipate, according to the dictionary, it says give equal rights of women and minorities. That's straight bullshit. Free from slavery or servitude? Nope, that's straight bullshit. And like I said, this is pretty much limited. I have a limited, because it's offline. But pretty much the word emancipation simply means to take from one hand and put it to another. So in other words, taking a slave from one plantation and putting him on another plantation. So the slaves were so-called freed from slavery during this time in 1865 by the so-called Emancipation Proclamation. But what it was is they were freed from the southern slavery and brought up to the north to serve as slaves in these these corporations that Esau was setting up as cheap labor. So now, because they're getting a little bit of money, they're thinking that they're free. But when you check out the so-called freedom, when they were freed, those that were down south in those areas and became sharecroppers, they were getting ripped off. So really, how free really are you? And the ones that were up in the north that thought they received freedom, they really were nothing more than slaves, minimum wage slaves. That's before Issachar and all the other tribes came over here. So pretty much when you're celebrating Juneteenth, all you're celebrating is being freed from the hands of the South and going into captivity or slavery into the hands of the North. That's pretty much all that you accomplished. All you accomplished, or all they made it seem like you were being free, but you're really not. You just went from one plantation to another. So you pretty much been bamboozled. So you could, get a better understanding of it, because the word emancipate means to transfer from one hand to another. And now you have something called employee-employer, which means that employee-employer, slave and master relation. And now that you've been so-called emancipated and are working, what happened? Eventually you got taxed. So your way of living, you got taxed for using the monetary or the monetary currency that was used as a means of exchange. And through that currency, you were charged a tax. And that tax pretty much made you a slave. You went from a physical slave to a contractual slave through the 13th and the 14th Amendment. 13th Amendment says that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall occur in the U.S. except for criminal acts or something along those lines. So now you became an emancipated slave. You're nothing more than an emancipated slave. So Juneteenth is a commemoration of you leaving physical slavery in the South and going to physical slavery in the North and thinking that you were free. Uh, this is Proverbs 22:7. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. So you really didn't get freed. You just got you just had the idea or the thought of being free. And that's what the word emancipate means. This is why when Dred Scott went to go get what, his 40 acres and 2 mules, and he went through the proper channels, he went through the court system, what happened? They denied him because he really wasn't a citizen. Because when the Constitution was written and the Bill of Rights and all that, it was written by Edomites. And it was not for all men. When it said all men are created equal, it's talking about all so-called white men, the Edomites. It wasn't talking about everybody else. That's why when Dred Scott went to go get his 40 acres and 2 mules, he just knew he was going to get something. What happened? He was shut down. Because the Constitution does not apply to you. And all they did was use the Constitution and the so-called civil rights movement and all that, and all of that genre, or not genre, all of that legislation to pretty much enslave the rest of the American public that was not under that subject under those rules and regulations, you know. So it says the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. So that's what Juneteenth is about. You're thinking that this is about the commemoration of the Emancipation Proclamation. The slaves in Galveston, Texas, told that they were free on June 19th of 1865, but it has nothing to do with freedom. It has everything to do with a transfer of slaves from one hand to another. Now, what do the scriptures say about having slaves? Well, if you were an Israelite, you could have slaves because the other nations were given to us as slaves, but the other nations were not supposed to put us in slavery. The reason why we went into slavery in the hands of the so-called white men, the Edomites, is because the Lord put curses upon us. So let's go to Exodus 21:16. And he that stealeth a man, which they did, and selleth him, which they did, or if he be found in his hands, which we still in his hands, he shall surely be put to death. Because through these different contracts, which are called adhesion contracts, or the paperwork or the signature that signs you to that contract, that's what adhesion means. That is voluntary slavery, which was never explained to anyone. Because the first time you became a contract slave was when your mother and sometimes the father actually signed the birth certificate. And that birth certificate gave the international bankers and the owners the right over that child. So that child became a slave once that contract was signed. And then you got what? The social security number and all those other contracts that you signed, or that we signed, to make us slaves to the international bankers. So that's why there's a debt, a national debt. And that's why the international bankers are about to call in the debts. And that's why you see trillions and trillions of dollars being pumped into the economic soup, which is watering it down. And pretty soon, this whole economic, the dollars is going to collapse because they're just pumping so many, it seems like everything is okay because they keep pumping money in there. But eventually, what that's going to cause is inflation and then hyperinflation. And when hyperinflation sets in, you could kiss the dollar goodbye. All right? So let me hit one more precept, and then we'll move on to the next topic. And the next precept is going to be in the book of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. And we're just going to go straight to the point. Deuteronomy 28, and I'll start at 47. It says, because thou servest not the Lord thy power with joyfulness, and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. So that yoke of iron upon the neck back then was a physical thing. But the yoke of iron today is dealing with these contracts. These contracts are the new yoke, the new thing that puts us into captivity or slavery, or gives them the authority over us. This is the book of Isaiah, the trying to think of the chapter, 10th chapter. Isaiah, the 10th chapter, and the 27th verse. And it shall come, and in that day, Salakia, and it shall come to pass in that day that his burden shall be taken away from off thy shoulder. And what is that burden? This is the contract. The contract that we sign. Eventually, when Yahushua comes, they'll be physically taken away, but first it's going to be mentally taken away. And this is why, there's this great awakening going on of the Israelites waking up around the world by the words of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua being taught by the prophets out here on these streets. It says, and it shall come to pass in that day that the burden shall be taken away from off thy shoulder. Yeah, because these contracts make us servants in servitude, and it's an actual burden that we're carrying. It's a physical burden like in slavery, but it's a mental burden, because now you have what? Bills. You have taxes. We have all of these things that we have to pay, which is a burden, to have to deal with, right? It says, and his yoke from off thy neck. And this is this spiritual yoke, I guess, for a better way, or mental yoke that's upon our people. It says, and his yoke from off thy neck, and the yoke shall be destroyed because of the anointing. And because of this word, the yoke will be broken because of the anointing. That's why Yahushua said, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And this is what's happening now, that mentally we're being freed up from the chains of slavery, which today are brought in by what? By the Emancipation Proclamation, where it was a transfer of slaves from one hand to another. And it just so happens that when they wrote in the 13th Amendment, they never said that it's involuntary, but it never said voluntary servitude. So if you want to be a voluntary slave, you can be a voluntary slave. But the thing is, they don't tell you that you're being a voluntary slave. And how is that? How are you made a voluntary slave? By signing these contracts, birth certificate, social security number, driver's license, so on and so forth. And everything makes one a servant. Because once you sign a contract, you are responsible for the terms of that contract. You see? And when they were bringing out that proclamation, Emancipation Proclamation, Jake had no clue what the hell was going on. They were thinking that they were just being made free. And that's all they wanted. But here it is, more than 100 years later, we're seeing that nothing's changed. You see, it only went from so-called physical slavery to mental slavery. See? So now, leaving off at that, now let's move on to the last part of the lesson, which is the young elder out in England, Ramah, a dream that he had, which Elder Manat Zagba re-uploaded it on his channel, and I was listening to it this morning, and there wasn't a lot said about the dream, because he only told what he could kind of remember. But the thing that I was meditating on is how these devils, like we've been saying, these devils been watching. People think that, you guys think, what you think? You think you are all that? The Rothschilds are going to be watching y'all. The Rockefellers going to look. Everybody's watching. Everyone is watching the prophets because of the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, and the way that this truth comes out, the way that the Lord magnifies His truth and makes it so crystal clear. People can't help but watch, because the Lord gave all the answers in the scriptures. And for years, these jive-ass turkeys in the churches been in the pulpit, but they ain't been bringing out no scriptures. They've been talking about situations. They've been giving feel-good speeches, but they haven't been going into the scriptures to bring out what's going on and give the people the proper answers. So now that the Lord got this thing turned up, you know, and you see the prophecies popping off, and it's being made crystal clear why all these things are happening. The people are watching. Everyone is watching. Some people are mocking, ridiculing. Most people are mocking and ridiculing, but other people are speculating and listening and worried, but hoping that what is being said by the prophets of the Lord don't come to pass. But it's gonna come to pass because it's a sure prophecy. Matter of fact, let's go to 2 Peter real quick, chapter 1. I wanted to bring out a couple more precepts on that Juneteenth thing, but nothing was really coming to mind. But that's all the Spirit. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 19. For we have also a more sure word of prophecy, because these words are sure. What did the Most High tell Daniel? He said, write the vision because it is sure. You know, in so many words, he told Daniel. It says, we have a more sure word of prophecy, whereunto you do well that you take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place, unto the day dawn and the day star arise in your hearts. And they're seeing the light shining. Yahweh Shai is the light. He told the disciples, you are the light. You are the light of this world. So people are watching. They're seeing the prophecies coming to pass. They're seeing how this book that people have been ridiculing and some people hold dear is coming to life. And how the Lord is putting the Spirit on men to actually bring out things out of this book, words out of this book, and painting the picture of what's going on right now. And they're amazed at that. And they're watching. The elites are watching. The celebrities are watching. The entertainers are watching. Top officials are watching. I wouldn't be surprised if top men in the Pentagon and the CIA, the FBI, well, the CIA, FBI are definitely watching. Certain police chiefs and top brass among the police forces watching. And they're seeing that, man, what these guys are saying is true, but if it is true, we're in trouble. So they're watching. So that's what I kept thinking about. And then the other part, what I kept thinking about, you know, with when he had because he had a dream that Elon Rothschild was asking, you know, they ran into each other, and he was asking him about the truth, and Ramah was asking him about the New World Order and all this, you know, but he said the look that he had on his face was pretty much, it was like a look of horror. He didn't explain it, but I look at it as like a perplexed spirit, a perplexed look, like they can't believe that these things are happening to them. They thought they had the world in their hand. They thought that they had everything going according to plan, but they didn't count on the Most High putting a monkey wrench in their plans, you know? And that's what's happening. So we have a more sure word of prophecy. So Amos 3 and 6 says, 3 and 7, surely the Lord will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets. And that's why we're able to speak. And we're hoping that we are the men of the Lord. We're doing the things that the men of the Lord are supposed to be doing, you know, and they can't believe that a bunch of nobodies are bringing out all of these wonderful things out of the scripture and explaining everything that's going on in the world out of these scriptures. And the words are leaping out of this book. And when brother's speaking, the picture is so clear that they can't help but to watch. They did all the ridiculing and all the mocking that they were going to do, but now they're actually paying attention. They're listening. They can't believe, you know, how everything is moving. You know how this word is going out. You know how the sign in the writing is on the wall, and how their time is up. They're watching. I mean, they're trying to destroy it, but they are watching. They're sending their agents and their flunkies, but they are watching. They're seeing what's going on. And they're getting nervous. They're not going to tell anybody that. They're not going to show that because they're in the background. But their agenda and their agents they got in the forefront are going to keep pushing, you know, their agenda. So now let's go from there. Let's go back to Job 27 chapter and bring out some points there. Job the 27th chapter. Yeah, man, that's what I was meditating on, thinking about those two things, how they're watching and how the Spirit have been having us say they're watching, and how they're gonna go into captivity, you know. So all that bunker stuff that they got and they're hiding and all that, go ahead, hide. I hope you're nice and comfortable, nice and healthy, you know. So after the destruction, the Lord's gonna give us a spirit to go around and hunt you down. We're gonna kick those shelters down with spiritual power. This is after the destruction. This is when the Lord comes back and sets us back up in the kingdom of heaven. In the beginning stages of the kingdom of heaven, that's what we're going to be doing, hunting you down. And it's going to be a pleasure. This is the book of Job 27 and 19. It says, the rich man shall lie down, but he shall not be gathered. He openeth his eyes, and he is not. That's twofold, meaning eventually you're going to die, but your dreams and aspirations and your new world order is not going to be, there's a term for it, it's not going to be realized because you're going to be brought down, you're going to be destroyed. It says, terrors take hold on him as waters, a tempest stealeth him away in the night. And when I read this earlier, I thought about how the young elder Ramah was saying, you know, how he had a look on his face, but he couldn't describe it in words. And I would say a perplexed, terrified look. You know, I mean, he could correct me because he had the dream, I didn't. It's just, you know, something that came to mind. It says, the east wind carrieth him away, and he departeth, and as a storm hurleth him out of his place, because you're going to be hurled out of your place. You're not going to be displaced, like, okay, just, you know, you can leisurely move over there, you know, leave from this area, go over there. No, you're going to be hurled out of your place. Matter of fact, let's look up that word, hurled. Yeah, damn, that's a hell of a word. Hurleth. So let me look that up real quick. That's in the book of Job 27, and what verse is that? 21. Okay, spare me 1 second. Job 27 and 21, was it? Yep, 21. The word for hurleth, sha'ir, to storm, by implication to shiver, that is fear. So they're going to be shivering, be horribly afraid, fear, hurl as a storm, be tempestuous, come like, take away as with a whirlwind. So they're going to be removed violently out of their place. Matter of fact, which that just brought a scripture to mind. Go from there to the book of Revelation, chapter 18 and verse 20. Start at 20. Revelation 18 and 20. And we're supposed to be rejoicing at this, man. We're supposed to be excited, you know. We're supposed to be excited at this, you know, which we are. You know, we're just waiting for this devil just to fall completely. It says, Revelation 18:20, rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for the Most High hath avenged you on her. So when we see this place falling, this is the avengement of the Most High, his revenge upon this place, upon Esau, upon these nations, for what they did to us. You know, it says, and a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. So once this place goes down, there's not going to be any remainder or reminder. The only thing that will be left here as a monument is this big area of burnt space. And that's why after you serve your captivity, you will be, all you Edomites will be rounded up and burnt up, and you will be as though you had never been ever. And that's the only solution to fix the world, to fix the problems of the world, to fix the problem of the LGBT and the food pollution and the water pollution and the air pollution and the extinction of animals and the extinction of trees and the destruction of the earth and the fucked up fuckery that they've done to the minds of the people. The only solution is to do away with all Edomites. And then only then will perfect balance come back to the earth. This is going to happen before that. But then once you're totally out of here, because the Lord don't need you no more. He don't need you no more. You already fulfilled your what you were supposed to fulfill. So going back to Job 27 and 21, the east wind carrieth him away, and he departeth, and as a storm hurleth him out of his place, because you're going to suddenly lose everything. It says, for the Most High shall cast upon him and not spare. He would fain flee out of his hand. So you're not going to be able to flee out of the hands of the Lord. It says, men shall clap their hands at him and shall hiss him out of his place. Because, man, people are ready for you devils to go down. I know we are. And we're just waiting for the Lord to completely take you out. All right, let's go. I've got a couple more precepts, and then we can close out the lesson. Let's go from there to James, the 5th chapter. James, the 5th chapter. And we can start at the first verse. James 5 and 1. Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. And that when it talks about rich men, it ain't talking about no Donald Trump or Warren Buffett or any of these Bill Gates or clowns like that got a little bit of money. It's talking about filthy rich. Talking about international banker rich, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and people of that ilk. So the Lord said for them to howl for the miseries that are going to come upon them. Because can you imagine that, going from a lofty position to having everything, and having no one for anything and calling the shots, and wearing the most expensive clothing, living in the most expensive places, eating the most expensive food, to going down to a goddamn slave. So they're going to hit rock bottom, but they're going to hit it hard. It says your riches are corrupted and your garments are moth-eaten, because the way they got it was by wrong, what they call ill-gotten gains. It says your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you. What is the rust of them? Meaning the way that they got them. Because that spirit is still there of the murders and the rape and the robbery. It still lingers, because there has not been anything done about it. It has not been rectified. So seeing that it has not been rectified, it's still lingering around. And that's what the Lord eventually is going to cause you to fall and to have to pay for the wickedness that you've done. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 26 and verse 21. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood, and shall no more cover her slain. And this land pretty much has been stained by the blood of the Native American Indians, which are the tribe of Gad, the Seminole Indians, which are the tribe of Reuben, the Mexican Indians, which are the tribe of Issachar, and the rest of the lands have been tarnished with the blood of the rest of the saints of the Most High, and also the blood of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. So there is no way to clean this blood. The only way to clean this land, should I say, is to shed the blood of those that shed the blood of the ones that were here before them. And this is what you're being prepared for, Esau. This is the book of Numbers, chapter 35, verse 33. It says, so you shall not pollute the land wherein you are, for blood it defileth the land. and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. So you being prepared for this. This is the only way to clean your slate. Only way. And that's why the Lord has America prepared for total slaughter, total annihilation by way of nuclear fire. So now let's go back to James 5:3. It says, your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Why? Because their whole agenda is going to go up in smoke. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. Yeah, so they're prepared now. They're ready now. This is why you see these big corporations and just in general, just businesses falling, because they have enough put away already. And that's why one of the last things they wanted to do, besides making their shit public, was to destroy the economy of the world, so that they can come in with the solution which would benefit them anyway. It says, behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. And you best believe that these jakes out here that are crying for the lack of wages and the way they're being defrauded, the Heavenly Father hears it. He hears what's going on. And this is why he's causing a lot of this turmoil to go on. Even though you devils think that you're doing it, but it's the Lord putting the Spirit on you to do it, to fulfill his will. And you can't resist it. Even if you woke up tomorrow and say, you know what, we're going to stop the New World Order, because we've been watching the prophets and everything that they've been saying is coming to pass. Even if you try to stop it and not go forward with it, guess what? The Most High is going to put the Spirit on you to move forward with it. Just like when the Lord Yahushua and the angels come back to fight, those men in those jets are going to be afraid. Those different militaries are going to be afraid. They're going to want to book. But guess what? The Lord is going to put the Spirit on them to fight. It says, you have lived in pleasure on the earth and been wanton, and that's you. You've been living in pleasure. You've been undisciplined. You fare sumptuously every day. You wearing that purple and scarlet. You living like kings on the earth. It says, you have nourished your hearts as in the day of slaughter. You have condemned and killed the just, and he doth not resist you. And you've done that time and time and time and time and time and time and time again. It says, be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Why? Because the Lord is the one that's going to give us, avengement, so to speak. He's the one that's going to revenge us on these devils, because the very first people that are going to taste of slavery are these international bankers among all the nations. Because remember, you have top men among the nations. We just focus more on Esau because he is the head right now. But all these different nations have top men, that live as kings. You have among the Moabites and the Ammonites and the Hamites, and the Ishmaelites and the Elamites, among the so-called Polynesians. All these different nations that are in cahoots and in bed with Esau, they all have top leaders among them, top rich banking men, that are benefiting from the wickedness that's going on. That's why the scriptures say that the Lord's going to punish the kings of the earth that have drank of the wine of a fornication. The Lord's going to deal with all of them. But Esau just happens to be on the top. This is Psalms 149:5. Let the saints be joyful in glory. Let them sing aloud upon their beds. Let the high praises of the Most High be in their mouth, and a two-edged sword in their hand. So what is that two-edged sword going to be used for? It's going to be used for punishment, for judgment. It says, to execute vengeance upon the heathen and punishments upon the people, because they have to pay. They did it to us, we got to do it to them. It says, to bind their kings with chains and their nobles with fetters of iron. See, so the kings, which are the ones on top, and the nobles, which are the ones that are in certain prominent positions, that are benefiting off of this whole situation. They're going to be prepared for slaughter. They're going to be prepared for slavery. They're going to be judged and punished. All right? It says, to execute upon them the judgment written, this honor have all the saints, praise ye the Lord. So that's the first thing that's going to happen to these devils, the higher ups, the elite. And then through them, when they start having children, their children are going to be the some of the ones over here in America that were burnt up and destroyed, and it will be come right back into the kingdom, born as a newborn babe, and be born into a curse, right into slavery. And that's going to be your first stop. Your first stop is slavery. You know, your first and last stop, because your last stop is going to be total annihilation by way of fire. And this is the last scripture, Isaiah 21. I'm sorry, Isaiah 24 and 21. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, which are who? These bankers, you know, and the rich men of this earth, beginning with the Edomites. It says, and the kings of the earth upon the earth, because these other nations, they're going to be carted into slavery too. Remember, it's not just Esau that's benefiting off of our backs. It's all of these nations. So the kings amongst them, meaning the top kings and nobles, they're going to be the first ones to taste of slavery. It says, and they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. See, so they're going to be gathered up, and then they're going to be put into workforces. And one of the very first things that these devils are going to be doing is what? Going around and some of them will be putting up signs of dead bodies here, dead bodies there, and the next batch coming along is going to be digging into the earth to bury all those dead bodies that remain from World War III. So how do you like them apples? Then the moon shall be confounded, and the sun ashamed, meaning their knowledge, wisdom, and understanding is going to be confounded, because they're not going to have any solution. They're not going to have any answers. They're not going to have a Donald Trump there to shoot his lip off and talk shit and try to Twitter anybody, you know, and get shit situated. It ain't going to happen. It says, when the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and before his ancients gloriously. And it's going to be a glorious kingdom, man. Going to be a glorious kingdom. And we're in the waning years of Esau's kingdom. You know? And that dream that the brother Rapai had is just a shadow of things that are coming. It's a little show, a little peek into what's coming. You know? And these devils, you best believe they're watching. Everybody's watching. Everybody's watching the Hebrew Israelites, because there's nobody out there talking about anything that's really going on except for the Hebrew Israelites. Everybody else is talking about some bullshit, entertainment, and, you know, just bullshit, idle banter, as Elder Apostle Gabar brings out. Idle banter, nonsense, you know, things that have nothing to do with the prophecies that are happening right before our eyes. Nothing to do with anything that matters. You know, it's all vain. What they're speaking is all vanity, because all they're doing is just, you know, talking out the side, pretty much talking out the side of their ass, so you can understand, you know. Pretty much. So with that, you know, that's been, you know, my take on those three topics. You know, that was, you know, just something that came to mind. You know, the taking down of these slave figure statues, Juneteenth, and the dream that the young elder Ramah had out there in England. You know, with these with Elin Rothschild. You know, so with that, you know, I pray that your brothers have been edified. Until the next time I say Shalom.